Okay, so before we go into the actual video, I wanted to give a huge fucking shout out to Miss Taylor Marie here on YouTube. She shouted me out last Friday on her Feel Good Friday video, and ever since then, I've literally been able to reach, I started out with 20, when she shouted me out, I had about 20 subscribers. Now I have over 100. I just reached 101, and I genuinely believe that it was because of her shout out, because of her shouting me out and getting more people to come to my page. It instantly, like, I've been seeing so much love here, and I thoroughly appreciate you so much. I know that my little 100 subscribers is probably not gonna do too much in comparison to what you did for me, but I thoroughly appreciate you. Sending tons of love your way, and if you guys are watching this video, please go check out her channel. I would absolutely love it if you did. She would actually absolutely love it if you did, and yeah, thank you again, and let's get back to the video. Hey guys, welcome back to Baddie in a Book. My name is Gabby, and today we have a book review, my first ever book review. We are going to be reviewing It Starts With Us by Miss Colleen Hoover. To keep this video as organized as possible, because like I said, this is my first one, and I don't want it to be all over the place. If it were up to me, I would ramble the entire video, and it would just be a rambling, chaotic book review. But to keep it organized, I have organized this book review into 5 parts. Let's go ahead and jump right into the first part. Also, a disclaimer, there will be spoilers in this video. So if you don't want to know about spoilers of either books, then don't watch this video, read them first, and then come back to this video. So this would not be a proper It Starts With Us review without going ahead and talking about It Ends With Us by Miss Colleen Hoover, because as you know, It Starts With Us is the sequel or the second book to follow up from this book. Now, she is not the main character, so I'm not going to go super heavy into this book. She is not the main character, but we are going to briefly talk about this so that we can catch everybody up to speed to properly introduce It Starts With Us. So first and foremost, I read this book a couple of months ago. I did not reread this book to kind of refresh myself on it for It Starts With Us. I just merely read it a couple months ago. I didn't love it. I really liked it. It was a very enjoyable read. I read it in one sitting. Miss Colleen Hoover gets us with the first liners, and then I just could not put the book down, but it still did not have that extra element. It was missing something for me for it to be like everybody else's experience was with It Ends With Us, because as you know, if you've been on the internet at all, whether you're on BookTube or BookTok or not, you've seen this book, you've heard of it, it's literally everywhere, and it's all the hype. Yeah, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Just to kind of go over the details of this book. So this one follows Lily. It is a single POV, and it goes from her childhood to adulthood. We see her experience with her father. In this case, he is towards her mother, but never towards her, but in my opinion, still a shitty ass father regardless. So she meets Atlas when she was a young teenage girl, and he at the time is homeless. She kind of brings him in, takes care of him. She sneaks him in at nighttime so that he has somewhere warm to sleep. She takes food over to him when he's sick, and so on and so forth. She starts spending more time with him at school, sitting next to him on the bus. And then she does this until he leaves to go live with a family member, or so he says that he's leaving to go live with that family member, his uncle that provided him a place to stay. Fast forward to adulthood, she meets Ryle, who is a charismatic neurosurgeon. He is super charismatic on the surface, but then after they get together, they've been together for some time, he actually ends up turning up, and it ends up showing pretty much a repeated cycle in history repeating itself essentially with her relationship with Ryle. We see kind of aspects of her mom and her dad's relationship kind of seep through her relationship with her and Ryle. And then Atlas reappears in glimpses towards the end of the book. He kind of steps in to kind of be that protective person for Lily. She ends up getting pregnant by Ryle. After she went ahead and had the baby, she requested for a divorce from Ryle. And then we're at the ending of the book. So the end of the book ends with Lily. She reconnects with Atlas. They exchange phone numbers. They run into each other. They exchange phone numbers, and then they are reconnected. So overall, I I really enjoyed this book, but with all the hype surrounding this book specifically, it just didn't live up to that hype for me. Everyone said that they had an extremely emotional experience with it. That was not the case for me. I really thoroughly enjoyed the book, but I did not have that emotional connection. I was not moved emotionally to the degree that everybody else was. It was a really good book. I couldn't put it down, but I didn't absolutely love it. So it did not give the emotions that it said it was going to give, period. Okay. Next we have the basics, and to introduce It Starts With Us by Miss Colleen Hoover. So this is the sequel novel to the It Ends With Us book. Initially, she had not planned on writing, Miss Colleen Hoover had not planned on writing a second book to It Ends With Us. It was literally just supposed to be that book, but because of the craze surrounding It Ends With Us, she ended up going ahead and writing the sequel book to kind of fulfill the request from everybody on the internet. And what I really loved about this book, to start off with, she literally has a little note to everybody kind of thanking her and kind of dedicating this book to the internet, to TikTok. So this book is about 300 pages. It is a dual POV, so we do get that dual POV, which I love dual POVs in books. Especially when there's romance involved. So we do get both Atlas and Lily's point of view. This actually picks up right at the end of It Ends With Us. So we have this book that picks up, there's no time that passes. You're literally picking up, you're putting down It Ends With Us and picking up It Starts With Us, and the timeline is literally right afterwards. We still get to see characters that were so beloved in, or so loved in It Ends With Us. So we get to still see Marshall, we get to see Alyssa, and then we also get to see Ryle, which nobody likes him, but he still reappears in the story. And then on top of that, we do also get some new introduced characters, which I will get into in a little bit. I really love Colleen Hoover's writing. I have yet to find a book that I haven't been able to fly through in just one day. They're really easy to read. Her writing is you get very easily sucked into her writing, which I do appreciate, because even if it's not a book that I'm like, this is fucking amazing, I know that I will genuinely enjoy any book that I pick up from her. At least from what I've read so far. I've read about 4 or 5 of her books so far, and every single one of them, that is a consistent trend throughout all of her books. So overall, I enjoyed this book so much more than It Ends With Us. This book is not really, there's no plot in this book. It is more of like an epilogue novel. There have been a lot of reviews that have advised of that and have confirmed that it is more of like an epilogue novel rather than it having like a plot or something additional. But I thoroughly enjoyed this one so much more than It Ends With Us. So next we have the letters. Now this one is a very controversial subject because a lot of people actually really don't like the letters aspect in both It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us, but I liked them. Unpopular opinion, but I really fucking liked them. So first and foremost, it's a very interesting way to introduce Atlas as a character. So she could have just been regular schmegular and just introduced him like any other character, but to introduce him and aspects of him, characteristics of him, since we don't really see that much of him in It Ends With Us, we really only see him in the letters and It Ends With Us. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. We wouldn't even know who Atlas is or any characteristics or how he is tied into the story without the letters. The other thing is that a lot of people say that it's very cringe, but I think that's very telling for how she was when she was a teenager. I think it's normal for us to have done things that were kind of cringe when we were a teenager, you know what I mean? So I personally, even though it was arguably cringe, that's very normal for a teenager. Not to mention, I used to journal. I think I also am a little biased too, because I used to journal when I was a teenager. I mean, I started journaling when I was in elementary school, and I even journal up until this day. I've been on and off, so there were phases in my life where I didn't journal, but I have always journaled. So, and one thing for me too is that I love being able to go back, because I still have all of my journals from when I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, all of that. And yes, they are quite cringy, but I do love being able to go back and read those journals. It's a part of me, you know? So I love being able to go back and read the journals, really re-experience myself when I was that age. So that might be where my bias is coming from with the letters. Now, I didn't write to Ellen, right? So I didn't write to Ellen, I just wrote as if I'm just writing and talking and speaking my mind. But the letters to Ellen, someone who is in middle school, high school, that's not an abnormal thing. Like, it's very weird, right? It's very weird, but like, arguably when we were all in middle school and high school, we did some weird shit, and writing letters to Ellen is not that weird on the scale of weird. The other thing too, like, even though it was very cringe, like I said, she was very young, and I also really loved that when she was going through a hard patch in her life, or a hard phase in her life, a hard chapter in her life, she did end up going back to what she did when she was a kid, which was writing to Ellen. So I thought that that was a very interesting reconnection with herself of, you know, when she was going through a hard time when she was younger, she was writing to Ellen, and then when she became an adult, she hadn't done it in a while, and when she really needed to get things off of her chest, she went ahead and rewrote to Ellen. Like, I thought that that was just an interesting touch and a reconnection with herself. She created a safe space for her to release whatever it was that was on her chest through these diary letters, or letters to Ellen, diary entries to Ellen. So the fact that she was able to reconnect to that, into that vulnerable space when she was an adult, I thought was very wholesome. And then on top of that, I really loved that Atlas got the opportunity to be able to read her journals from back in the day, And then also I really, really loved the fact that he implemented that in his communication to her. So he started writing her letters as a result of him realizing that she used to write these journal entries and that she's kept them all these years. It's just the sentimental things, the really small sentimental things that I really thoroughly fucking enjoyed about these characters, about Atlas specifically. I also really loved that he really was interested in reading her thoughts. So more than just reading the journal entries and being nosy and shit like that, like, he thoroughly wanted to see and genuinely wanted to see what her thought process was and what she thought of him, and he really took that, like, to the heart. He took it seriously, and I thought that that was the cutest thing ever. Like, he didn't take reading those journal entries lightly, which I thoroughly fucking enjoyed, and it's such a good characteristic of him specifically. Lastly, there was a huge complaint. There had been a lot of complaints about journals being re-entered or pretty much copied and pasted into It Starts With Us, but I thoroughly enjoyed that, only because I didn't reread It Ends With Us. So if you didn't reread It Ends With Us and you just went straight into It Starts With Us, the journal entries being replaced back into It Starts With Us kind of give you the connecting pieces to It Ends With Us to It Starts With Us, because if you don't go back and read it, you may forget. I will say that the other thing I realized about It Ends With Us with reading It Starts With Us was that it wasn't as memorable. So all of the small little details that I was reminded of with reading It Starts With Us in those letters, I wouldn't have known or remembered by just going into It Starts With Us and then not having those journal entries in there. So I thoroughly appreciated, like, her putting the letters back into It Starts With Us, even though it was the exact same as it was before. It also gave context to Atlas's reactions to some of her journal entries from reading them. So I think it was appropriate. I definitely appreciated, because if I had just read his reactions to the journal entries and she didn't put back in those journal entries specifically that he was reacting to, I think I would have been a little bit lost, because like I said, I didn't go back in and read It Ends With Us before reading It Starts With Us. I just went straight into it. So even though it had only been a couple of months, there were still details that I missed, that I forgot, that I was reminded of by reading the letters that she decided to put back into It Starts With Us. So next we have the characters, the existing and the new characters that were introduced, which I have some new favorites. This is a very popular opinion. A lot of people love Marshall and Alyssa's relationship. I thoroughly loved their relationship. I loved seeing their relationship with each other, with Lily, and with their babies as well. I loved that. So there's nothing really new about that. There's still a solid piece of the story in terms of being there for Lily, and also calling out Ryle, because if you don't know, Alyssa is Ryle's sister. With Atlas, I love that we learn so much more about him in this story. So with having the dual POV, with it being more of a focal point on them two and their romance, we get to see a whole lot more of Atlas, and we get to see a little bit more personally to him rather than just getting Lily's perspective of him. We actually get to see his point of view and more characteristics of him, which I absolutely loved in It Starts With Us. Thoroughly enjoyed that part of it. I love the characteristics of him. I love the protective aspects of him, the loving aspects of him, the romantic aspects of him. Love all of that. I love his ambition to be able to run 2 businesses or 2 different restaurants. I love the different characteristics that we were able to see from him. I also loved being able to just see a lot more of him this go around rather than what was just shown in It Ends With Us. So next we have Ryle. So I fucking can't stand him. He is a disgusting human being. It's very funny to me that he somehow finds a way to victimize himself in situations. Like for example, there was let me find it because I took a picture of it. At the beginning of chapter 26, when he was like, "You disappoint me, Lily. You treat me like a monster. I'm her goddamn father. I was happier before I met you." Bitch, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, how can you put your hands on somebody and treat somebody like that and then turn around and still somehow find a way to victimize yourself? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, what? But anyways, so he's very fucking disgusting. He needs to go get help. Like, he's a very disgusting human being. But that's a very popular opinion. That's not really something that's unknown. And the only thing, I'm gonna get a lot of shit for this, but the only thing that I absolutely disagree with, and I guess you could say I kind of side with Ryle on this, was the fact that Lily gave their daughter, a middle name that was somehow linked to her and Atlas without communicating that, right? That's a little disrespectful to me, in my opinion. And only because she did not communicate it, right? Because even though she named her daughter Dory for her own personal reasons and it's connected to her, there is still a connection to an ex. And that to me is like a little fucking weird. Like, it's just a little fucking weird. You should have said something, especially because it's his kid. Like, imagine how you would feel if like the roles were reversed, right? If your man, if you and your man had a kid and your man decided to pick up the middle name or the name of the child and it's linked to him, but it's also linked to him and an ex. You wouldn't like that. So that's the only thing. He's never ever fucking justified to act the way that he acts, but I can understand him being upset about her naming Emmy after Dory, which is a connection to Lily and Atlas in some way, shape, or form. It would be different if, you know, Lily and Ryle had a healthy relationship and that Atlas was long gone in the past. Still think it's a little bit weird that she would want to name a child with her new man after something that happened with her and a previous man. But, you know, everything can be understood. Anything could be understood with communication. And I feel like because she didn't communicate with him why she picked that name, and the fact that it was in some way, shape, or form, even in the smallest way, linked to a previous man, that's a no for me. It's a no for me. So he's still disgusting regardless, but I don't agree with that. Next, we're just gonna get all the negatives out of the way. So Atlas's mom, I cannot fucking stand her. I cannot stand her. Like, I can't stomach her. I cannot, that whole saying that we see a lot all over the internet and all over everywhere, where all kids deserve parents, but not all parents deserve kids. That is, if there was a picture next to that definition or next to that phrase, her picture should be there, because she was disgusting. She was neglectful, and then had the audacity to like come back in and still kind of like Ryle play the victim and still fucking poor me. And it's absolutely disgusting that she would choose her man over her kids. Like, and I know that happens so often, and it happens, unfortunately, it's so common. It's really so fucking common, but it's so fucking disgusting. I could not stand her. Every section of the book where she was talking or she was in the picture, I was so fucking annoyed. Then next we have one of the newer introduced characters. He is introduced in the beginning of the story and kind of comes in and out throughout the story. It's Mr. Theo. He is so fucking funny. Like, I will put some of the quotes or the parts of the books that were super fucking funny, but he had me laughing. Like, he was literally roasting Atlas the entire book, and he's like, what, 12? I really also thought that the therapist aspect of his character was really interesting as well. Of course, it's not taken seriously. Like, it doesn't actually think that this kid is his therapist, but I thought that that was something that was very interesting. And to see the dynamic with Atlas and Theo before we get introduced to the next character that I'm about to talk about, I loved it. He had me laughing the entire time. Everything, like, he was a smart ass, he was funny, he was blunt, which I really appreciated, which is very common with kids, but he had me weak the entire book, and I thoroughly appreciated Colleen Hoover putting this character in. He was the perfect additional side character. He was the character that we didn't know that we needed, so I thoroughly appreciated him. The last character that I'm going to talk about is Mr. Josh. Now, he is introduced kind of like in the middle of the book. Surprisingly, I honestly, when we got to the story, or the part of the story where Atlas's restaurants was being vandalized, I honestly thought it was Ryle, or in connection to Ryle. So I was actually kind of surprised by that part of it, by his introduction to the story. But I was actually way more interested and invested in the side plot of Atlas and Josh than I was with the romance between him and Lily. And the reason is because Josh is actually introduced as Atlas's little brother that he had no idea about. If you remember in It Ends With Us, his mom had kicked him out, and at that time she was already pregnant. She never communicated to Atlas that she was pregnant with another baby. So Atlas had no idea that this little boy even existed. And so we ended up finding out that Josh was the one that was vandalizing the restaurant and breaking in, finding a place to sleep, because he had ran away from his mom. I loved this. This is the part of the story that had me like turning pages. I loved the romance between Atlas and Lily, of course, but this is the part of the story that made me love It Starts With Us way more than It Ends With Us, because it was just so wholesome. It was so satisfying, this part of the story, and it was something that just kept me, like, I wanted to know what happened. I wanted to know how their story would end in this case. So I loved watching his and Atlas's relationship. I loved as soon as Atlas found out about Josh, he was immediately protective, immediately like, no, I need to save him from my mom. Like, he needs to come stay with me. I also really loved that when Atlas went to go drop Josh off at the hotel. I think she was staying in like a hotel or something like that. And then she started to put her hands on Josh and whatever. He went in there, he pushed her to the side or moved her to the side. And then that started the relationship progressing, because he took Josh in and started to take care of him and all of that. Josh is such a good kid, and Atlas came in at the perfect time in his life to be able to help him turn his life around, show him love, show him that people actually give a shit about him because his mother ain't shit. He came in at the perfect time before it was too late to have that impact on somebody. It is never essentially too late, but once a person is damaged and that's all they know is what they've been experienced from parents that are supposed to love and care for them and be there for them and protect them, and then they start to get closer and closer to adulthood or in adulthood, there's really no going back from there. It's very hard to kind of undo all the damage that somebody else has done. So I think that he came in at the perfect time to be able to get him out of that situation, bring him in, and show him a different way of life and a different way of connecting with people, which I thoroughly appreciated. This was my favorite part of the book, hands down. I was so relieved when Atlas took Josh to go see his dad, which is the stepdad, I believe, his stepdad from when Atlas was a kid, the one that his mom was with, the one that his mom chose over Atlas. And when they got there, you know, Josh was like, nah, I'm good. And they ended up going home together. And that's kind of what connects the title of the book to the book. It Starts With Us. It starts with us. You would think that it would be about Lily and Atlas, but it's actually about Josh and Atlas, which I loved. I absolutely loved. That brings us to my final thoughts. I know the rambling is coming to an end here. I love this book way more than It Ends With Us. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The plot of Josh and Atlas is what kept me like, I really want to finish this and see how this book ends. This is an epilogue novel, so if you're looking for something with more of a plot, this is not it. I think that Colleen Hoover delivered everything that we needed to close out and have closure with the story. It was super cute, super wholesome. I loved Theo in this story. He had me weak the entire time reading this. I read this in one sitting. That's how much I enjoyed it. But that is a common thing with the Colleen Hoover books, at least in my experience. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't really know what else to say about it other than that. Both of these are really, really good, but I did enjoy It Starts With Us more than I enjoyed It Ends With Us. But that is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.